guess it is now time for some questions, if you do have some, for Nicolo and Anshul.
Thank you for the presentation, it's very interesting. I don't have a question, I just have a remark, or at least want to give you like my perspective. I'm with a global financial institution, and therefore I'm familiar with all of those issues, and in fact I'm responsible for it and managing on a daily basis. I tend to not fully agree with what has been said in terms of why do we do stuff, why do we spend so much money. In fact, regulations have been there for decades. They have been there even before the financial crisis. In particular, like the most severe ones, let's say, in terms of scrutiny, are sanctions against terrorists and all of this kind of stuff, which actually was fostered after 9/11 back then. So if you look back, like most of those regulations actually got were posed in the early 2000s. The issue, from my perspective, why we spend so much money is not necessarily because the regulations are so complicated or are so massive, or regulators are imposing more and more and more all the time. In fact, it happens, of course. The issue why we spend so much money is to be able to demonstrate that we do whatever we can do to make the regulator happy. Because if we don't and we screw up, we get we get a lot of fines and we have a lot of issues. That's from my perspective the big issue, at least speaking for a financial institution. I can also speak for all the big banks, all the global financial institutions, brokers, and so on. We're not scared by the regulations. We're able to implement them without any big issues, to be honest. It's a change project, we get it done, we report to regulators. We are scared of doing not enough, whatever this means, because we've seen HSBC, a lot of other cases, they got all of those massive fines, and that's actually the part we're afraid of. I know the example of a global financial institution, a bank. I went to them the other day, and they tried to explain to me what they're doing in terms of financial sanction screening. And they showed me this org chart where like hundreds of people, and the head of this entire thing wasn't even able to explain to me what exactly every team is doing. And I was like, okay, seriously, that's how far we got. I just wanted to share this perspective, and I'm also interested in exchanging on this. But at least from our perspective, it's not a regulation itself. It's like it's the way that regulators started going crazy by the extraterritorial application of law, for instance, in the U.S. or Benjamin Lawsky back then in New York, threatening and blackmailing and on the license things, and just stepping out against the government. And so it's actually the behavior of the regulators that that make us really feel scary, to be honest.
So in fact, what I want to bring to your notice, there was nothing on the regulator side which we are not saying that regulators are wrong. We're just trying to build an efficiency in the entire value chain. The RegTech is primarily for that. It's building a kind of a sandboxing setup wherein the incumbents within the industry can actually latch on to the regulation. It's not that there's a scary picture of 300 million pages of regulations coming in or whatever it is. It's going to come. I mean, you can't stop that. It has to be there. It is must for the market. But yeah, is there a technology? Is there a tool? Is there an efficiency? I mean, right now, all the financial institutions, what they're doing is in isolation, and they're doing their regulatory, legal, and compliance stuff in isolation. Is there a way wherein the regulator has a touch point? Though now regulator has all the possible data which is required, but the compliance and the regulations somewhere has to have a touch point with the core setups of the big financial or a small financial institution, and so there is a clear-cut efficiency. In isolation, an organization spends a decent amount maintaining it. But if there is a technology, definitely the efficiency and the cost can go down. And subsequently, it will get passed on to the value will get passed on to your customers, your profitability, your revenues, everything. So if you look at the regulations have to be there. It is, you can't have a setup wherein without regulation things. Definitely the crypto world is going through that, but yeah, regulations have to be there, but what we are trying to highlight is, are there tools which can actually help the incumbents within the industry to make things more efficient at a less cost?
And I fully agree on the efficiency part. I mean, that's also key for us. Nevertheless, as already said, I really like that certain regulators offer those sandboxes. I was talking to the UK regulator end of last year about this very topic, to bring together, set up a meeting between startups, the regulator, and us as a financial institutions, and they're really motivated. Nevertheless, that's all the messages that we have received, in formal and also informal talks with the regulators. Just having technology and a tool in place doesn't really convince them, and that's the part that we are currently struggling with, right? We have, we use technology all over the place because we can make things smarter and we can make it more efficient. But the way it grew in the past doesn't necessarily help us because, in particular, banks were hiring like hundreds and thousands of compliance officers. If they have now, a new tool in place and they just, get rid of 500 of them, they have in writing that they basically released and decreased the amount of compliance officers, so also the controls, by replacing it, for instance, by machine learning and artificial intelligence. And that's a part, I think, where regulators also need to take this more into consideration. Really say, we agree that this is an appropriate control, and that's the part that that's still lacking. I would love to have RegTech all over the place. To be honest, it's my daily job. So I really love it and enjoy this topic very much. I just wanted to also challenge a bit on this because I think RegTech companies that tend to they see from their perspective it's too easy to sell, right? They go to a company, as we've seen in the video, and say, use us and you're compliant. Well, no, definitely, I can sign. It's not that you're using a tool and you're compliant. It's about the entire setup, the entire ecosystem that needs to come together.
No, I perfectly got your point, and I agree with you. I think fear definitely comes from not being compliant, but this is something which existed also before, right?
Just to find when the build-up.
I think the fear comes from one factor, that the banking business has not changed, but as I was saying, the business model has changed, right? Because if because of Basel III you're applying to work on capital requirements which are higher, and you can take, for example, less risks, it means that you need to get money from somewhere else. Okay, so you can get the RegTech for optimizing your cost, but at the other side you also need to find a way to reduce your customer acquisition cost, not only on the compliance side. That's why it's not compliance fear, but it is fear of making money from different sources and optimizing areas in which before they were not spending time. That's why I made the example of Trulio, which is a good example. So if you can remove the friction of online onboarding, then your customer acquisition cost goes down, and so you're not just optimizing your compliance related cost, but you're also optimizing your customer acquisition cost.
Thank you.
Is there any other question? Okay, I guess we now do have like a lot of experts in RegTech over here. Everything understood, so no more questions.
Yeah, it seems like everyone is pretty much convinced with whatever you have presented, so that they don't have any question. So I would request Marcella to present the momentum to the speakers for their valuable contribution. It was a very nice presentation.